All right, team. Welcome back to the Fireside
Ooh,
PM podcast. I've got Amit Badlani with me today, and we're going to talk about machine learning and AI in general around product management. Welcome to the show, Amit, and maybe introduce yourself.
thank you so much. That was, I think, like a right segue to get in. I mean, of course, like everyone's been using machine learning AI heavily into their products. A lot of PMs who've sent me questions along the way in the last year have actually been building more ML products for either their startups or like their big tech companies that were not using machine learning before. And so I'm really, really excited to see, the era of chatbots sort of like usher, the ML AI space. I've been in the space since 2009. Back when, this is, I'm a little bit joking, exaggerating here, but literally one of my professors was like, this is a Ponzi scheme. You should be in cloud, or you should be in some of the, other streams, especially I think back then, 2009, it was really, really important for not just the cloud market, but also at the time, algorithms were
Mm-hmm.
getting more advanced on the search side. So, like search, advertising, those were really big. So if you had to do software, being in those spaces was actually very lucrative. I think that was just the onset of like mobile computing as well. So apps were coming out left, right, and center. So this was that era when I really, really was fascinated by machine learning, actually artificial neural networks. So that's where I've spent most of my decade plus life. Started with simple artificial neural networks, regression models, gone up to CNNs, recommender systems, and then beyond that, of course, like now generative AI transformer technology, which we're using not just in chatbots, but also vision and all other use cases as well. So I'm seeing this space kind of transformed. It started in 1950s and 60s, but really picked up steam in 2000, like late 2000s, and that's where I feel lucky to be part of that. And yeah, been working in the Valley for 10 plus years now. Came here in 2012. So it's been 12 years, and very exciting to see San Francisco, the city, all transform in the last 2 years and get back to its glory as well. Like tons of meetups, tons of excitement in AI. And what I love about the last 2 to, I would say, 5 years really is the democratization or like the barrier to entry when it comes to programming, whether it's machine learning or just in general, like programming in general has reduced quite a bit. And that is very exciting to me, that now domain experts, whether you are in the legal domain or you're all about like education or healthcare, you could or even like one of my friends is in chemistry, and all these domain experts can actually enter and build applications and change the world without worrying too much about costs involved with hiring engineering teams, or even like the cost of time involved with developing applications. So yeah, very, very exciting.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on, and I've heard that that characterization a lot of like ML 10, 15 years ago was considered, not the most promising area, especially if you wanted to, pursue a successful academic career. And um, turns out that that was not good advice. So I'm glad that you
Right.
stuck with it. Maybe we could start
Yeah.
with, do you see like a big difference in how product managers should think about AI when it comes to, I can't believe I'm saying it, but like traditional machine learning and
Mhm.
generative AI? Do you see those as two very different kind of categories of capabilities, or how do you see that?
Yeah, so I see that more of as a subset. Of course, like we saw really this field being popularized by killer apps. So AlexNet was one of the biggest algorithms to propel machine learning into like this mainstream. with image data, right? Of course, it started with like cats, dogs, but then you can really use that to detect objects, like filter out things. Initially, we started with like simple recommendations of like
Hmm.
songs and spam filter for your email folder. So that's where I started back in 2009. That's all it was. And then it quickly morphed into, with AlexNet, it quickly morphed into like more of a vision use case, like vision AI. And that's where all of this explosion started happening. So I really see machine learning or really ANNs, like artificial neural nets, as the bigger bucket of
Hmm.
AI. That's one school of thought. And then deep learning, as well as some of these like transformer-based approaches that we see today, are actually subsets of that. So I see that as more of a subset. But generative AI is actually a different beast. Yes, it started with transformer technology and large language models sort of summarizing the web data, but now we are seeing other aspects of machine learning, like reinforcement learning, for like reinforcing good behaviors, just like you teach a kid, right? Or your dog, right? You're reinforcing good behaviors through RLHF, reinforced learning through human feedback. There's obviously human in the loop, which are these subject matter experts
Hmm.
trying to go through, the machine generated responses and correcting them, validating them. And so I definitely think generative AI as such is bigger than deep learning transformers. It's kind of like a field in itself, which will encompass some of these machine learning foundations, like reinforcement learning, some other techniques. We talk about like fine tuning. Those really stemmed from early machine learning models, where as the models and layers get bigger, you try to reduce wastage and make those more efficient by taking away, neurons that are not useful. So when you have a trained model, it's a large model, and you can effectively fine tune it on a particular use case by taking away, layers that are not as important. So we call that pruning, and those techniques can actually be applied in transformers as well, for dedicated for certain use cases like industry verticals. For instance, healthcare might not need the entire like history on like football, right? And
Hmm.
then strategies with like how to play soccer or football. So I think that's where fine tuning, pruning, and those kind of techniques are being used today. And those are like really machine learning foundation techniques that we used back in the day, right? And they've evolved over time. So I certainly think, as all of this being like a subset of machine learning, and that's why having machine learning foundations on how this technology has evolved, what are certain techniques, how do you make trade-offs, helps you become a good product manager, making right trade-offs and decisions going forward. Um, as
Yeah.
AI writes code, and it's doing everything now.
Amit, one thing I've noticed when I first started being involved in projects that used ML was that um, the team was very involved with training the model and developing the model and tuning it and kind of improving it. And then I think with some of the Gen AI stuff, I found like we were less involved. That it was like,
Right.
well, it just ran and it is pretty good. We just need to give it more data. And I'm curious, like, if you fast forward 5, 10 years, like, what will be the role of the product development team in improving these capabilities beyond, you know, giving it lots of data and compute power?
Yeah, I think that's where one of the biggest pieces of advice to me from one of my professors was to steer away due to the costs involved,
Hmm.
and why it's such an academic field. So it's great if you're doing like academic research, but in terms of actual implementation, when you have to deploy features in production, you care about cost and all of like the data pipelines you build, ML operations, now we call it LLM operations, right? That is huge, not just in terms of like the resources, but also to get this like infrastructure pipeline, you actually have to spend, capex, capital expenditure to buy, like these servers or rent them from somewhere. So I think that's where the whole cost of managing the pipeline as well as the capital expenditure was huge. And then, it was not as justifiable back then. But then as compute started getting more and more efficient, and also these models started getting uh, better and better with the right data, it also led to data, this whole field of data science, which is essentially like data massaging. So you have machine learning, which is like labeling things and predicting. And then you have really great data pipelines, vector databases getting better and better. And so we've had to invest in those in the last decade to be able to get to where we are today. And I don't think the role of a software engineer or a product manager completely goes away. Even if you see Cloud, GPT, Bard, all of these models, they are really good with general intelligence, but you have to guide them along the way, right? There's something called prompt engineering. I definitely feel prompt engineering is something transitionary. We are working really, really hard to get natural language understanding into some of these
Mm-hmm.
models. So you won't need prompt engineering. The model is actually going to ask you, did you mean this? Okay, great. Like, design me this product feature and implement it. Okay, why? What is the KPI? What do you want me to, optimize for? Why are we doing this? How does this fit into the strategy? Like, model is going to ask you questions, right? And it's going to do the thinking. So, but that doesn't take away from the fact that as a product manager, you're a decision maker. As a software engineer, you can change the role, and the role could be like AI agent engineers. Those AI agent engineers are actually visualizing and tracking your agents, seeing their outputs, how they're making decisions. And this whole pipeline needs to be maintained. So you have a bunch of like validation, QA that you need for this. So essentially, roles will change. They are morphing as we speak. They are not going to completely go away. We said this in industrial revolution as well. Like, okay, machines are here. All we do is farming. It's been taken care of. There's going to be no need to work anymore. But I think if you look at it after industrial revolution, you see a massive boost in jobs. There's just different types of jobs. There are machine operators and people like actually skilled in operating those machines as well as validating those machines. I think that's how I see this field of AI kind of evolve. It's definitely going to take away some jobs for the better, and I think monotonous jobs, and then you're going to replace them with newer jobs, which is the potential is even higher because as a species, you want to keep evolving and growing. That's what we've done. We've not like stayed still, even though advancements when you go back to industrial revolution were quite significant.
Yeah, it is an exciting time, and I do a little bit of angel investing, and every startup I'm looking at claims to be a AI first company. I'm curious from your perspective, Amit, like what are some examples where you've seen product managers or innovators use AI in a way that is really building a useful and sustainable business or product? We've
Mhm.
all seen a million demos of pigs flying and through skyscrapers and stuff like that, and that's cool.
Those
But
are awesome.
you
I can
can't get
I
enough
can
of
make
those.
movies. I can make movies now, which
Yes,
is
that's
great.
true. That's true. And then I think a lot of us have heard of a company that laid off a bunch of customer support people saying, hey, we
Right.
just use a chat. What are some other
Right.
examples where you've seen AI actually like deliver shareholder value beyond just the promise of what it might do someday?
I think you hit the nail right on the head. Every company is going to be AI company. So to me, it doesn't even matter if you put the name AI
Hmm.
in front of it. Of course, maybe today it matters to get funded, but in a year, I think that's going to go away. More or less every company is going to be AI turbocharged. So the way I see it is massive productivity boost. Like you're seeing monotonous tasks that you can automate with robotic process automation (RPA). So that robot process automation has a CAGR which is higher than even AI and generative AI, right? Same with robotics. I think it's high time that we actually need to transform our supply chain and manufacturing. There's huge amounts of like productivity boosts, and safety is being enhanced by deploying machines in these scenarios where earlier humans were actually operating machines, and it wasn't actually very efficient. We should just let machine talk to machine, right? And everything is connected via cloud or whatever private cloud in that case anyway. So I think those are massive boosts to GDP, economy, whether you talk about United States or outside. Healthcare is a big one, right? And so definitely see a lot of innovations happening with drug discovery, genomics, digital pathology. I think now you have a lot of visual data from every aspect. I think Brian Johnson talks about being the man who's been most measured, and we've gotten technology to a point where we can measure every aspect of our body, and what do you do with that? Preventative care, it's definitely going to get cheaper. Drug discovery takes years. That timeline is going to cut in half or maybe even more. So accelerating the timelines, by 2 to 5x is massive boost already. And so that's where I see major growth in the next 5 years. Robot process automation is a huge one. Robotics, you're already seeing the growth. Healthcare, surgical robotics, those are really big pieces. But again, going back to the question, yes, every company is going to be an AI company. So even if you were a Shopify or like a marketplace, you could get massive boosts in productivity by automating some of your workforce monotonous tasks. In some cases, it could be customer service, being automated, and that's great. And those jobs will just go somewhere else. I think there's displacement happening right now, where we see job roles transform. And so I think there's definitely micro skills as a customer service support manager that you have, which can help in training AIs to become better, and even like building agents. So we just as humans have to abstract ourselves a little more, and that's part of evolution that's happened even previously, like we discussed with Industrial Revolution.
Yeah. Yeah. I also remember when every startup was like a .com startup, and then every startup was a
.com, right?
mobile startup, and then every startup was
Right.
a social startup, and then every startup was a cloud. And it's now just like you have to have all of that as part of your
Yes.
table stakes. I'm curious,
Yes.
Amit, what are your thoughts on the product manager role? Do you think that there is this interim period where there will be AI PMs, like PMs who specialize in AI, or do you think it's like, no, every PM should learn a new set of capabilities and skills, and here's what's going to change? Like, how much of a change will it be for a product manager?
Yeah, I think every PM is AI PM. Every company is going to be AI company. Whether you're Rolex making watches, yes, it's mechanical movements, but you can certainly have AI be deployed elsewhere, like your content generation,
Mm-hmm.
social media generation, customer service, customer support, right? And so that was just one example, but you can take a look at like every particular industry that can have massive boosts with infusing this technology. So I'm a big proponent of that. I really try to raise awareness on how it can help, and what approaches to take based on whether you're a startup, small company, or a large company, depending on how much budget you have. Because most of AI, we talk about just replacing jobs. Yes, you're getting rid of the operating expenses of people, but you still have those high operating expenses for actually these agent workflows like AI agents to do your tasks, right? Even at a chatbot level, if you want a private, secure experience, retrieval augmented generation, which is huge for customer service bots, is costly. It's not coming at a fraction of a cost today, right? And so definitely we can get there, but we're not there yet. So that's where I definitely see every PM becoming AI PM. They need to pick up some of the skills. They need to understand what are the costs involved and what would be the right trade-offs. That way, they can build their features mindfully.
Let's make believe that a PM went into a time capsule and was returned back to Earth in 2024,
Yeah.
and they had no knowledge of any AI, of ML or generative AI, but they were like a great PM for many, many years.
Yeah.
And so they're good at understanding customer problems, putting together product strategies, roadmaps, working with engineers, like shipping stuff. What would you say would be the first few things that PM should focus on to kind of retool or get more current with this new era that we're entering?
We need great PMs. So and PM is like a combination of like tactical hard skills and soft skills, but that those are all very essential. I think it's just raising awareness on some of the key aspects of machine learning that's getting inculcated in some of these product features. And companies that are infusing AI, they probably would have engineers and like these different roles like AI agent engineers, and guardrail designers. So those you need to, as a product manager, you need to have the vocabulary to be able to have strong like good conversations, and you're the one that's instrumental in getting everyone together, facilitating discussions, making decisions as a product team. And so if you are an effective PM, you need to stay ahead with the times, and that's likely the only reason why these some of these skills, to enhance your vocabulary, to know what's going on in the field, um, what are some of the different approaches, what costs more than the other. I think those practical skills can help you, because engineers are generally not thinking on the lines of cost to the company. They're really thinking what's the right way to develop this application. Whether that application or that feature is right or wrong, that's not something engineers are focused on. That's the product manager's job to like focus on those. So I would say, having skill sets on the foundations of machine learning definitely helps product managers, however good they are.
All right, Amit, we have a couple questions in the chat already, so I want to pull up one of them.
Yeah, let's do it.
Haresh is wondering, are we just going to be replaced by AI as product managers? Like, will the CEO and CTO just ask Claude, like, hey, here's my team, here's what we're good at, here's a bunch of customer feedback we've gotten. Please produce a roadmap and PRDs for next quarter.
Yeah, I think that's the models are getting way better at and even like accurate at writing PRDs. That's like a really good application for a chat GPT kind of application. And so yes, you can do that. I think Zuckerberg or someone else as well supported that view. So Zuckerberg said that middle managers probably won't have any use. So I think it's all about like your skill sets. Definitely, we'll see jobs lose. It's also the state of the economy, right? It's not just the AI. And if you look at the data, and there's actually less than 10% of the jobs that are lost are due to AI and automation. It's more due to economic factors and those groups actually shutting down. And so, if you look at the data, it doesn't suggest so, but definitely there have been statements out there where organizations want to become more efficient. So there's definitely going to be impact on some product managers. That's why I think it's very important to not just be a great PM, in terms of your principles, but also inculcate some of that like ML foundation knowledge. And I believe process stuff which is monotonous, like writing a PRD, that's not what a PM brings on to the table. It's facilitating the discussions, building the right products, making the right choices and the trade-offs that are needed to get that product out to the door, right? That's exactly what builds. And today, yes, as a CEO or CTO, you could actually write to ChatGPT, and it can give you like a really nicely crafted PRD. Even you can have agents sort of automate that PRD further and talk to engineers and update your different like tools, agile tools, whatever you have you. But it still needs a lot of fine tuning for your particular organization, because as a PM, you take into account your product's mission, vision, values, what's your core competencies, what's the product market fit. And that's what a general intelligence is not able to get. And you need to guide it there. And you cannot just guide by being a good prompt engineer. You actually have to be a subject matter expert. You need to understand what products work, what strategies have worked, how do I price a product well. And now, if I know all of those good product fundamentals, how do I marry that with some of the machine learning tools to make the right decision on the stack my team's working on, right? So I think those aspects will not go away, and so those jobs won't necessarily go away. There's definitely going to be like trimming. The role might morph. Product managers that are more well versed with machine learning will find themselves, you know, less dispensable. But yeah, that's what I feel.
Yeah, I would just build on that. I think the elements of the PM job that deal with summarization are likely to be replaced or accelerated by AI.
Yeah,
Like, summarizing a bunch of market research you got, or summarizing a bunch of customer feedback you heard, summarizing a meeting, like those things. Like, I'm glad. Like, I think a lot of PMs don't like doing that anyway.
hmm,
And then PM activities around using really great judgment and making great trade-offs,
right,
and also building internal consensus. Like, those are things that probably are going to be harder to replace. So I think PMs will have to move their skill set kind of up the stack a little bit. And maybe like
right,
your traditional IC is going to have to kind of develop skills that you would expect from a PM, like people manager,
right.
earlier. And then the people manager
Yeah,
should probably, have some of the director kind of strategy skills and so on. So I don't know that we'll be replaced, but we won't have to do a lot of the grunt work as much in the
yeah.
future.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's all about like adapting your stack and abstracting
Hmm.
yourself. Monotonous tasks, obviously, for the better, they're going away, so that's great. And then whatever's not going away is more and more features. So yes, you become 3 times more productive. Let's say I'm just
Yeah.
throwing out a number.
Hmm.
There's 6x more features coming in, and a lot of people talk about like FANG companies, and their resources, workforce reducing. But people don't talk about the number of startups that we see. There's new startups and companies being born every single day, and so there's definitely more and more job creation. And so how you position yourself and your skill set is the most important.
All right. Next question. Looks like Anushka is maybe in school. And if you were to recommend a specialization for students pursuing a master's in CS, what would it be based on the field to seem high growth and promising?
I would say, Anushka, just go to the basics. I think if you're pursuing a master's in CS, data structures, algorithms are still very important. I definitely think having those fundamentals is actually important. Physics, in some way or form, is important for every engineer, whether you're a computer science um, or data scientist or other engineer. Physics is what's moving our neural networks, the way we think in human body, they're also transforming the way we design artificial neural nets. And so I would say definitely like having applied physics knowledge is something that's very valuable today. But yeah, those are really the two things I would
All right,
say focus on.
great. One comment I would make on this is that if you optimize for what you think is going to be hot next, you may be one step behind. So I
Right.
I always advise students to like focus on learning how to learn and learn how to master new topic matter quickly and synthesize information. Like that will never go out of style. Whereas, there's a bunch of people years ago who were like, "Oh yeah, you got to do data science, or you got to you got to
Yeah,
do cloud engineering or whatever," and those are important for a period of time. But
yeah,
for a long term tech career, like you got to be ready for the next 10 waves that'll happen over the next
exactly.
20 years, kind of thing. Um,
Exactly.
Here's another question from Alden. Oh, might be a good segue, Amit, to your class. But can you recommend some
Absolutely. Yeah.
resources? Yeah.
Yeah.
How do people hearing this who are like, oh wow, it sounds like I really got to get up to speed? Like, where do they even begin?
Yeah. So I think my friend's working on a great book on like ML product life cycle. I'm working with him on that. That's not out yet, but there's definitely a lot of resources. There's one from Chip Wen, who's written a great guide on like ML systems. It might start off with very fundamental, so it's a great way to get some foundation knowledge, but it goes deep in the as the chapters progress. And so I think that can be great book. Also, there's definitely multiple books in product and design that helped me think in general. So if you were to revisit, you can actually revisit a book called How I Miss My Pencil, right? And that's basically a book on design, but the fundamentals are same, as if you were to apply those products today in, like building your software or hardware products in general. So I think that's one of my favorites on design, but it can help with a little bit of product mindset and AI. I'm definitely running a course on ML foundations because I recently realized in my one-on-ones, I've been holding like mentorship sessions for over 2 years. I also teach at Stanford. So in my interactions, I've noticed that there's definitely a lot of PMs mid-career or early stage that do have great product fundamentals, but they don't have foundational ML or AI knowledge. So how do you accelerate your career with those foundations is something that I focus on. I think here's a slide that Tom's. Thank you, Tom, for sharing that. There's a QR code. You can find out more. There's email list. You can sign up as well. I'll definitely, send out mini lessons on emails, and then this course will definitely be a cohort-based course. So if you decide to take it, you'll get access to a Slack channel, your cohort, and you'll develop like do exercises. So those exercises definitely help you become better at these. So many people will talk about, okay, let's join a Stanford or an MIT course. I ran some of those, so I know like the curriculum is set and the curriculum is really great. But sometimes what happens is with these things you need to practice. It's more about like practicing it than actually learning those, because you can learn for free anywhere, right? I do agree that YouTube, there's like it's overwhelming today. Like even LinkedIn learning is slightly overwhelming. So some of these curriculum courses are like structured, organized, but they'll also just give you standard assignments. They're not going to be ahead of the curve with real world challenges and problems. And so having a cohort based approach would help there. And so yeah, really looking forward to that class.
Yeah, maybe give us an example of one of the hands-on kind of interactive or experiential things that you're going to be doing on your Maven class, which I've linked to in the description as well for people who want to check it out. Like, what would be something that people can do to get their kind of hands dirty versus kind of sitting back and watching a YouTube video?
Yeah, I think I have like two examples I can go in detail. So let's say like, you're building a social media. You can take Instagram, for example, right? And you're building something of a recommender, whether it's an ad recommender on a reel. You're basically using machine learning technologies for that. Now, what are the different ways in which you can actually obtain data? And if you don't have data, what do you do? Because machine learning is mostly based on data. With GDPR and some of these other guidelines that have come up, users' privacy and data is being protected. But there are ways of using machine learning for prediction, using some of these transformer technologies for prediction, where you don't have data available to you. And so I think that's one tangible example of what are the different types of models, what are the different types of techniques in machine learning, and when to use what, right? The other example could be, if you're, let's say, a mid-career PM professional, AI is being infused in your features, but it's the first time your company is building like an AI chatbot for automating like a customer service feature in your app. You want to actually know what exactly is the best route out there. There's multiples. You can actually integrate a chat GPT, like you can pay OpenAI per API call. That model is already trained. It's the best, almost the best you can get out there. And you can do that way, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. You can have retrieval augmented systems built out with some open source model that's actually free. And you can fine tune it, but that fine tuning also comes at a cost. It won't be a monthly subscription you pay OpenAI, but it'll certainly be the resources you need, whether it's software engineering resources, QA resources, and inside your company. So really breaking down those cost numbers and see what makes sense when. It also really depends on what's the goal of the organization. If the organization wants to really stay private, and a lot of my healthcare, like clients in the past have, expressed interest that they would like to have everything on premise, which is not send any data, and even prompts are data, like they are IP. Today, a prompt can be used to generate code. So that piece of prompt is your IP. And so you don't want to like send those things on the cloud unsecured, and have that, control over your prompts and data. So I think that's really dependent on what you're designing, and we'll take like real world case studies of different startups. I have like another ML executive come who's had like startup experience. He has a company of his own, so that will give you real world cases. I have also partnered and right now like advising a startup, so there'll be examples from that. But at the same time, like I have some like big company experiences back in like Microsoft, SAP, and NVIDIA, where I worked on some of these case studies, which, of course, they will be differently worded, but they'll still be real world examples, and we'll talk through that.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think the real world examples and kind of working through different scenarios when you're actually going from like, oh, here's what the technology is, to like, well, but in real life, like what would I actually do, and what decisions would I need to make? Sounds great. The other thing I heard you say a few times in this interview is costs. And it's so interesting that you think AI is like, oh, it's great science stuff, it's engineering, it's amazing. And cost and privacy and scalability and security, like those are even more important perhaps now than they were 5-10 years ago. And so a lot of PMs will probably need to bone up on the non kind of science side of it, and into the kind of nuts and
Yeah.
bolts.
No, exactly. And I think that's what companies want to look when they're hiring new PMs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like whether you're able to make the right trade-offs. Just for reference, I mean, if you want to use GPT-4, which came out, a few months ago with their multimodal model as well. So that's the latest and greatest. It takes $20,000 for you to like you have to spend 20,000 a month to actually get retrieval augmented generation with a GPT-4 model. And so the costs really add up, and we don't really talk about it, but these are important things to consider.
Yeah, because eventually, if your amazing idea turned demo actually scales, like somebody's in a different part of the organization is going to get a bill,
Exactly.
and it's not going to be
We call it
small.
like,
Yeah.
right, right.
That's great. Maybe last question before we wrap up, Amit, is what are some common mistakes you've seen enthusiastic PMs make who are like, "Oh my god, this is amazing. It's like the new electricity. I've got to lead the charge for my company." What are some things that PMs listening to this should be kind of mindful about in terms of common pitfalls for PMs trying to kind of push that envelope?
Yeah, I think the data is really the new oil.
Mm,
That's really the electricity. I would say AI is like infrastructure maybe,
mm,
that leads to the flow of that data. So it's a slightly different perspective, but I have, in my experience, seen that to be more true. Where if you make rookie mistakes with the data, um, and I'm not even talking about like not having trust. Let's say you have no biases, you have the right permissions to have the data, just the way you pipeline it through to your all algorithms, and design algorithms to take most advantage from that data is key. And I see a lot of PMs make mistakes there. um,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. Like if data's the oil, maybe AI is like the refineries and it makes magic out of the oil, but you still need
right,
access to that oil.
right,
Yeah, yeah, and that will be one of the few things that can differentiate all these companies that are all running on the same general models and, picking from one of the major providers. Like it has to be, I would imagine it has to be their data that helps differentiate versus
right.
their competitors. Yeah.
Right. So I think a lot of companies trying to like develop moats around data, actually they
Mhm.
might start out as a GPT wrapper, right?
Mhm.
Either a chat GPT wrapper or whatever, like other open
Mhm.
source model out there. And then later, you're able to like collect so much useful data, which is also characterized and structured well. The
Mhm.
metadata and everything is well labeled. I think that's a moat in itself, right? And so that's why you have to think about it. You can really, really go wrong with it. So it's a two-edged sword, but when you do get it right, it can be a weapon. So, and in terms of, I think the oil analogy, I think it's more electricity. So you can actually get electricity not just through one source like fossil fuels. You can have other sources like wind, solar as well, right? And so data might not exist today, and you might not have the permission, but there are ways of like simulating data. There are ways of like licensing that data from somewhere else. So I think it's just an energy source. You can certainly, in situation where there's lack of data, you can still um, get around some of the problems. So we'll talk about that also in the course.
Love it. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on. I see a lot, tons of people on LinkedIn in the live viewing right now, and so if people find this useful, feel free to share the conversation with your other connections. And if you want to check out Amit's class, it is linked below. There's a QR code on the screen, and sounds like it'll be a great opportunity for people who want to really go from talking about AI to kind of seeing a little bit more applied use cases and a little bit more in the practical side of things. So I'm sure people will really enjoy it. Thanks for coming on, Amit.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Tom, again, and all of the live viewers. Hopefully, this was helpful. And again, like I'm only active on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out if there's any questions, even outside of this.
Love it. Well, we'll stay tuned and hope to have you back soon.
Thank you so much.
See ya.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. All right. So let's take a look at Amit's syllabus here, because and then I'll give you some thoughts on my side. But let me just share the screen. So if you want to go to Maven, his class is you could just search for Amit ML. Looks like it's a 2-day class. Day 1 is the landscape, and day 2 is career path. Then looks like some bonus sessions, so check it out for sure. Looks like a great course. And speaking of Maven, I'm teaching a class. Well, I have one that's already going on around nailing your product review as a PM, like your exec reviews with VPs and directors. And then I've got another one coming up, which is a business strategy for PMs who don't have an MBA, but wish they maybe had taken an MBA level strategy class. So that'll be fun, and that'll be all, for the most part, tech case studies, and we'll use kind of the Harvard methodology there. And then, and then I've got some other stuff in the works. But hopefully this conversation with Amit was useful to you. I've got another one. I'm interviewing another Maven course instructor about UXR, user experience research. And that one's actually coming up in a probably in an hour or two if you want to catch it live. And that's with Elizabeth Creighton, who used to be a UXR at Shopify, and now she does a bunch of UX research, strategy, and training. So for her, she's going to talk about how PMs screw up user interviews. That's not the title she suggested, but I thought it'd be kind of fun. So if you find this content useful, don't forget to follow me on LinkedIn. And you can also subscribe to this channel on YouTube, Fireside PM, and listen to us on audio wherever you listen to podcasts. See you later, team. Bye.